Hello, everybody. It feels like the first week of the rest of our football team. Like the first week of the rest of your life. This feels like the first week of the rest of your football team because a couple things have happened. One is that people continue to be enthusiastic about DeMeco Ryans, and yet people also are freaking the hell out about every random thing, which I like because it means that people care instead of people being apathetic about stuff. I myself have felt the juices stir in a way that they haven't stirred since maybe puberty. So I feel good about it. The big thing, obviously, this week has been the fact that CJ Stroud was running with the twos on the first day of OTAs and that a lot of people were flipping out about it. And I'm cool with that because, I myself thought that it would probably be best just to slide CJ in right from the get go. He's number 2 overall pick. Just get it started right from the beginning. The more I thought about it, and I went back and revisited some Bobby Slowik audio and an interview from last year. This has been the plan all along. I think that's the important thing to remember. This is not like it's a indication that CJ is not far enough along in the process. He's been in the building like 2 weeks. So this has nothing to do with what CJ has shown in meetings or anything. And I feel like some people may have gotten that impression. This is all part of a plan. And Bobby Slowik, the offensive coordinator, alluded to this in an interview he did last year about Trey Lance. So I'm going to go back and forth a little bit with some CJ Stroud interviews and some Bobby Slowik interviews. And I'm going to show you how it's all meshing together right now. And there's nothing to freak out about yet. Not that there ever will be, but if there ever is something to freak out about, it won't present itself until training camp at least, if not autumn, according to DeMeco Ryans. Here's CJ Stroud describing the coaching situation.
And Gerard have done a great job. Coach Slow is a great young mind. He's an amazing play caller. So I'm super excited to work with him and Gerard. Of course, I've worked with him before.
Okay, so we really don't know how good a play caller Slowik is. I appreciate CJ saying that and the vote of confidence, but he is very intimately acquainted with bringing young rookies along into a 49ers offense. Trey Lance, Brock Purdy, these last couple of years, they've had to do this while also working with a veteran quarterback in Jimmy Garoppolo. So as a refresher, and some of you may have seen this when I played it earlier this year, this is Bobby Slowik last year talking about the process of bringing Trey Lance and Brock Purdy and any other young quarterback along in this Coop Shanastani system.
Had a pretty consistent way we kind of go about installing our offense and the process we go about doing it and the reasons we do it. And it's the same this year as it's been in the past. And it is not easy in the beginning.
Yeah, two key things there. It's the same way this year as it's been in the past. This was in 2022 in the summer, obviously, and it's not easy. I think that the thing that hopefully sets apart a young quarterback learning this system versus, say, Bill O'Brien teaching Deshaun Watson that system is that they've done this over and over again. This is multiple years where the concepts change, but a lot of the core principles are the same in this Coop Shanastani offense. And they've developed a way of bringing guys along kind of brick by brick, like a syllabus almost. And you got to go through chapter 1, then chapter 2, then chapter 3, then chapter 4. But you build this knowledge base and this comfort within the offense that as guys progress through it, they get more and more comfortable in it. And I think the good thing about this is okay, that's loud. Hey, Bubba, tell me if you're saying say it loud, CJ Stroud, because the audio is loud, or if you're just giving that chant. So this is CJ Stroud talking about learning that process.
I feel like I've tried to do a lot of work on my own, so when I come back the next day, that I have that put in the bank to be able to move on to the next install, whatever it is. So
yeah, and it's like learning physics or something. I guess math maybe would be the best one because you've got to learn how to do one set of principles, then you can build on to the next, then build on to the next. You can't skip any chapters or you're just a mess. So that is the nice thing about this system. I think sometimes people feel like it might cap guys at a certain level because it can be rigid, but for young guys or you know, in the case of Sage Rosenfels, who's going to be on the channel here sometime in the next couple of weeks for multiple reasons. One, because he knows the system. Two, because he went to Iowa State, and Xavier Hutchinson obviously was played in a very similar system to this. Oh, no, he went to Iowa. Excuse me. But anyway, so we'll have Sage Rosenfels on. But like Sage played his best in this system, partly because it just gives you all the answers. So as long as you study the book and as long as you know the offense, it gives you the answers. And a lot of the things that young quarterbacks struggle with, they don't have to struggle with if they just paint by numbers. And later on, you can blossom into a beautiful flower or something and find some independence within the offense. But for right now, in these first couple of years, kind of the same way Brock Purdy was able to do last year, you hope that CJ keeps doing what he's doing, is just learn this.
You have to start with the foundation and really build them to, okay, now here's the next step, here's the next step, here's the next step. Now it's all together.
Yeah, so Bobby said it much better and more succinctly than I did, obviously. But a couple more things about this specific topic, because I want to get into some of the audio from Jalen Pitre, from Davis Mills, from all those guys that I didn't get to go over yesterday. But CJ was asked about preparing for the starting role or competing for the starting role. I think CJ gave the right answer. We heard this yesterday, but with a little bit of different perspective now. I want to address it again.
For me, I'm just trying to get better. It's not about being with the ones, not about being with the twos. It's about getting better. This is what the spring is for, just learning the plays, getting the timing down, learning my receivers, learning Woods, learning Tank, learn how Nico runs his route, learn how Johnny runs his routes, how Dalton, just anybody I can learn from, and that's what I've been on. It's not about ones and twos right now. It's about just getting better as a whole, so we're getting ready for training camp.
Yeah, and I think that's the key. As far as whether he's running with the ones or running with the twos, he's going to be throwing to those receivers that we're talking about. And in terms of learning the offense and running it at a faster speed or conducting it, there is something to be said for you got to get some practice experience and get these notches on your belt before you take that next step over. Even Davis Mills, no matter how you feel about him, he's got more experience doing that. But it's very remedial at this point, and it would be for any quarterback. Think about Trey Lance. When Bobby Slowik was talking about that 11 months ago now, that was with Trey Lance, who is going into his second year. So it's not like this is a big mystery or something in terms of how they're handling CJ Stroud right now. They're just doing it the way they've done with a lot of different quarterbacks.
It takes time to train how to play in rhythm, how to feel the pocket, how to stay aggressive, how to know when the right time is to let stuff rip and when the right time is to check the ball down.
Yeah, and I think all that stuff in terms of timing, being comfortable in the pocket, understanding exactly what it looks like when you can let it rip, all that stuff. I feel good about CJ Stroud picking that stuff up. It's just a matter of getting reps. Twin 98, this is exactly what I'm addressing. Like, you don't draft a quarterback at 2 and not start him. Right, it's May. It's May. There's nothing. I don't understand. I honestly, for the life of me, I don't understand why somebody would freak out in May about where CJ Stroud is on the depth chart. It genuinely doesn't matter. So I'm not worried about it one bit. Robert Woods weighed in on this and kind of echoed some of what Bobby Slowik and CJ Stroud were saying in terms of getting to know the receivers. He was asked just about working with the young quarterbacks and coaches right now.
Yeah, just pick their brain. I'm trying to be in there and know what they expect from a quarterback perspective, and then what they want from a receiver, and being able to have some extra time and kind of just relay messages of what I expect in the route and what I'm thinking from the quarterback and defense perspective, where we both expecting the ball and being able to like steal a rep on the film and be able to go out there and make kind of life in person. It's really just finding ways to get extra reps in the meeting room without taxing our bodies.
Okay, a couple of key points there. One thing he said, talked about getting reps in the meeting room without taxing their bodies. That's a big thing in the NFL. And it isn't at any level of football, but especially in the NFL, you learn, okay, you can only take so many reps of football practice before your body breaks down. So if you want to be good, you got to be able to get those mental reps. So those conversations with the receivers, with the tight ends, all that stuff really, really matters. And CJ will learn in this offense, he's going to be integrally tied to the run game as well. So his conversations with the offensive line, the running backs, all of that stuff about the run game, it's key. And from what I've seen in OTAs, CJ is really, he's latching on to and listening to the lessons about exactly how precise he needs to be in the run game. It's not just the pass game. It's his footwork in the run game, his fakes in the run game and on play action and everything. It's a really, really big deal. And with Robert Woods, remember his first year with the Rams was Jared Goff's second year in the league, but it was the first year that Sean McVay was with the Rams. So he has seen, like Robert Woods has seen a young quarterback in Jared Goff learn this system, see exactly what it takes. And in that first year, I think Robert Woods he played 12 games and he had about 800 yards receiving. And then the next 2 years after that, he exploded. He had 1,200 yards and then 1,100 yards a year after that with a still young quarterback in Jared Goff and a guy who was just learning that system. So it's not just Robert Woods being able to help as a veteran. It's Robert Woods having seen a younger quarterback kind of matriculate his way through the system. It's interesting too that Jared Goff was the guy that people compared CJ Stroud to. For better or for worse, I think that's something that Robert Woods has some experience with. I think with a guy that's got arm talent, isn't incredibly mobile, but mobile enough. And I get excited when we'll hear about a little bit from Robert Woods later on, but I'm still burned a little. I'm burned by the Brandon Cooks experience enough that it's hard for me to love a veteran wide receiver brought in because he knows the system and because maybe somebody likes him. It just feels too fresh. It's too fresh to forget the pain of the whole Brandon Cooks saga. So jumping into DeMeco, because I wanted to revisit 3 of DeMeco's answers from yesterday that I thought were interesting. First, just to put a bow on the CJ Stroud stuff, DeMeco wants everybody to calm the hell down.
The process with all our players is to come out and improve and get better each day. When the fall comes, that's when we'll talk about starters and who are the best 11 men to go out there to help us win games.
Yeah. So come autumn. I don't know. DeMeco so far is going to get a huge grace period when it comes to giving non-answers and giving the stiff arm. I think as long as he keeps his pleasant demeanor, then within football reason, he'll get testy at some point, I'm sure. But I think there's been kind of a strain of condescension between Bill O'Brien to an extreme degree when he first got here and he acted like he was here to teach all the yokels about football. And then at the end when he was just disgusted with everything. But then I feel like even Lovie Smith at times would get a little bit condescending. David Culley was just a pleasant human being. I would never have poor David Culley. You would get frustrated for reasons that had nothing to do with attitude or anything like that. You wished maybe he would answer some questions more directly, but you also felt like you had to protect him a little bit, and you didn't want him to go there too much because he was in out of his element. So this has been a pleasant blend of competence and not talking down to people that I think people will continue to appreciate about DeMeco. DeMeco also you answered a question about Case Keenum and how he's doing.
Keenum has been outstanding, I think, for both Davis and CJ. Keenan has been awesome. Right? He's been great to have. Very smart player. Right? Knows it like the back of his hand. So it's really good for those guys to have Case similar to Robert.
And I know that we'll talk about Davis Mills later, and I know people got worked up over, I guess, maybe the way he answered some of the questions. I'm totally cool with everything with Davis right now. I think that one thing that Davis will learn, and maybe he knows this already, it's just hard. His as obvious as it might seem to other people that, okay, the writing is on the wall and CJ is going to be the quarterback. Football players should be a little bit delusional. You don't want a team full of backups that are just fine in their role. You want guys that think they should be the starter, are working to be the starter, plan on supplanting the starter at some point. That's what you want. That's good tension. B, though, it's important for Davis to know that this system is part of the reason Case Keenum is here. that because Case is familiar with this system, look, he gets a job in the city that he wanted to go to. He told Mark Vandermeer and John Harris that he really only wanted to either stay in Buffalo last year or come to Houston. And, obviously he would have gone where he could go, but those were his two choices. And he gets to come here mostly because he's a good dude who's played good football, and can certainly start if you need him to, and he's done it in this system. So he can help a younger guy out. And that's what's going to get Case an opportunity again this year. So Case, and that's how it works. Like Case is at that age where, just like Tyrod Taylor or anybody else, their opportunities to start are going to come in situations like this. Maybe somebody gets injured. Maybe somebody's a bust, whatever it might be. And then maybe he gets another go at it. Ryan Fitzpatrick ended up having kind of a renaissance and a rebirth in the second part of his career, just by getting a couple opportunities like that and continuing to transition him into something else. So Davis needs to understand that, like by really latching onto and learning this system, whether he starts this year or not, he's going to create opportunities for himself. Half the teams in the league are running this system. So I'm cool with it. I'm glad that Keenum feels that way. As far as the question that DeMeco has asked, and I played this yesterday, but it's just funny to me. So DeMeco was asked about rectifying last year's third down struggles.
I'm not aware of the third down struggles. I'm not really. It doesn't matter what happened in the past. With whatever happened here, it doesn't matter. We're starting brand new right now, and we'll create our own path. We'll set our own path. That's what it's about. It'll be about the 2023 Texans. Nothing that happened in the past right now, we're not concerned with that at all.
Oh, and another thing, that's what I wanted to tell you this. As DeMeco is saying this, DeMeco came in 2006. That was Kubiak's first year. And I've never had this conversation with Gary. I want to talk to him about this because I've told him a couple things, from early on, like lessons I learned from that first year. And, and I was very complimentary of Gary in the way he handled everything coming in as a first-time head coach. I thought there were a lot of things that he did really, really well. One thing that I didn't like on the defensive side of the ball, and that I think DeMeco may have picked up on because Richard Smith, the defensive coordinator, was just out of his element in a lot of ways. You got to be careful when you go into anywhere, and I think this would be the same for like going into a business or anything. You got to be careful in acting like every single thing that was there before you got there sucked, and because you end up alienating a lot of otherwise good people. It's interesting, and I was generally given pretty good behavior, like really good treatment by Gary Kubiak himself. There were a couple other Rick Smith and Richard Smith did some dicey things, but there is an element sometimes where like Richard Smith is coming in from Detroit and telling us about how he's going to shape things up and be run the way they're supposed to be run. Like, no offense to Detroit, but at the time it was one of the 21st century Detroit jobs. It's not this recent resurgence of Detroit. And like, I think DeMeco understands that. He's not that kind of guy. I mean, he's about as opposite as it could be from Richard Smith, but he also he's not going to concern himself with pitting himself against the prior regime. And some coaches do that. Some coaches almost need to prove themselves that prove that they're better than the previous guy, or they got to talk smack about previous anything at all. And it's just weird. Kubiak wasn't like that at all. So I think just not worrying about last year and evaluating guys for what they are goes a long way. Also, I've told some of you guys a story too about Wade Phillips before, where Wade told me that he'd learned from going into multiple different new jobs that you got to be really careful in assessing the situation in general, because you'll get your predecessor might tell you things to help you out. Hey, watch out for this guy. He's a son of a bitch. But this guy's awesome. And then Wade comes in, and for whatever reason, it's the exact opposite. And it's not because the previous guy was trying to sabotage him. It's just that sometimes guys mesh differently with different people. So that's the kind of stuff that DeMeco has a common sense thread to him that some football coaches don't. So I like that. That's a long-winded response to a very simple question about third down.
I'm trying to put our team in as
Oh, and this is him on his what he's doing in practice right now is situational football.
many competitive situations as possible, offense against defense, just to see how our guys respond, right, to competitive football. And that's what it's going to be come in the fall, right? You got to line up, you got to compete.
Yeah. The other thing too that I think DeMeco understands, especially as a middle linebacker compared to some coaches, is just the need for guys to be able to think on the football field. As much as football is so regimented and there's direction from the top down and from the sideline in, teams that are able to think for themselves and make adjustments onto the fly and understand game situation, including defensive, even us stupid defensive linemen, we're a lot better off if we're really thinking about exactly what the down and distance is, exactly what the personnel grouping is on the offense, all of that stuff. And DeMeco gets that. And much like I think Belichick does a really good job with this, I think at times O'Brien did and tried to be, but I don't know. I think O'Brien was a little too much of a authoritarian sometimes, but he wants guys to be able to, he doesn't want guys to be robots out there. One more, I believe, from him on Stingley and Pitre.
Pitre and Stingley, those guys fit any defense because they're both playmakers. They're instinctive, they're fast, they're physical, and they love playing football, and they like to play with their hair on fire. So any defense we play, anything I call, those guys are make it work because they are such great players and they love playing the game.
Yeah, that's just, if your kids are playing football or any sport at all, that might, I was trying to think of like the absolute best advice to give to kids. Lately, I've been veering more towards a lot of lessons about caring about your teammates and extending your focus outward. But I think sometimes that's lost on teenagers. As far as I'm still going to tell it, but you just got to, whatever. They're not always listening. So as far as what can help them out individually, you will always have a spot on a team if you can figure out a way to overcome your fear and play with reckless abandon. Like you just will, as long as you know your assignments. If you don't know your assignments and you play with reckless abandon, then you get DJ Swearinger out of here. So if you know your assignments and you play with reckless abandon in any sport at all, other than like chess or something, coaches are going to love you. And even in chess, they'll find a spot for you on the chess club if you can bring that kind of passion. It's just like some kids are scared to do it. I know at times when I was in high school football, I had to learn how to like really not care about my physical safety. I don't know if that's the advice you want to give your kid. Like if you can just care, if you can learn to really not give a damn about your physical safety, then you'll be all right in this life, in many professions. Okay, here we go. Jalen Pitre, finally. On to the fresh stuff. So, Jalen Pitre, I cut out all the questions so you guys don't have to sit and not hear the questions as people are asking the questions. This is Jalen Pitre on his first impressions of CJ Stroud.
Every day he's always looking for something to get better at. Like today after OTA 2, he coming up to the DBs asking different things that we're seeing and different ways that he can get better. Like it's a real professional in CJ, and you can see why he was drafted so high, because he really cares about the game of football.
Yeah. So far so good. Like we've heard nobody's gotten up there and be like, this guy. I guess number 2 overall. That's so everybody is past the good teammate test, and so far I think that the image I'm getting of CJ, and kind of if you were here and you saw the Bobby Slowik early on, I'm going to repost that as a separate CJ topic after this is over. But I highly encourage you to go back and watch it and click like when we do that, or click right now. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Seth Payne. I played for the Texans, played 10 years in the NFL. I do sports radio on Sports Radio 610 now, and I also do this YouTube channel. So please subscribe, like, all that good stuff. I don't usually drink beer the way I am tonight, but it's going to be a long live stream. So we're hunkering down for winter on this one. But the CJ Stroud and Bobby Slowik, who we played in the early part of this live stream, is they're both very earnest. I think like they take their shit seriously. And Bobby Slowik was the son of an NFL coach and coordinator who used to like draw up plays and leave them for his father in the morning before his father went to work. This is when he was like 11, not when he was like 24. And so like I think they're both they're kind of dialed in, and maybe sometimes people misinterpret that being dialed in as something less than sociable or something. I don't care. I don't care if they're not sociable. Nick Saban's done all right. He's not sociable. Not in any kind of a normal human way, at least. Okay, so what are some of the nuances that you got better at to contribute to your success as a rookie? I'll take some of your guys' questions here in a little bit too.
Yeah, just overall knowledge of the game is you're never, complete in your, knowledge about the game. It's always evolving and you always learn new things. And just leadership, I want to be a guy that the team could, use in hard times. And, I'm just trying to step up in that role.
And if people know about Jalen Pitre, the cool thing about his story, and again, like there's kind of a theme growing over these last couple of years of they're almost like guys that you'd feel comfortable with your daughter marrying because they tend to stick around. Like Jalen Pitre stayed at Baylor through a coaching change, everybody else is bolting through the other issues too. Jalen Pitre wanted to stay at Baylor and stuck it out, and like very much was committed to just being a Baylor guy. DeMeco Ryans comes back to Houston. One of the reasons that really appeals to him, aside from having played here, is that his wife is from here. Like there's kind of a commitment gene in a lot of these guys that they're drafting over the last couple of years that I feel good about. And when Jalen Pitre talks about stuff, you can just tell he's wired a little bit differently than a lot of young football players. He just I think he's got a different perspective on things. This is when you hear CJ said that he has to earn everything. What do you think about that comment from your quarterback?
Oh yeah, it just shows that he's a true competitor. A guy that wants to work and a guy that wants to, compete at everything. You can hear that in his voice, and I'm happy that he's on my team.
Yeah, for those of you who missed that, CJ basically just, when asked about running with the twos, he said he doesn't care. It's just that's what right now it's all about getting better. And I don't know if that, CJ's good at putting a chip on his shoulder. I've got a chip on my shoulder now on behalf of CJ. I don't think he probably looks at this current status as a chip on his shoulder as much as a challenge. Because again, the way they're handling the depth chart right now, I think is the way they've handled it in San Francisco and elsewhere. And I think it was the plan coming in. They probably told CJ early on that this is how it's going to be. So this isn't any kind of a reflection on CJ, the person or player. It's just how they're going to handle a rookie during minicamp. In your words, what is the difference between last year's defense and this year's defense if you're explaining it to the fans out there?
Yeah, that's a great question. A lot of
I just like that first part. That's a great question.
Familiar faces, but I would just say new energy. There is a couple new faces, and obviously we have a new coach and a new defensive staff, so I would just say new energy.
New energy. I'm good with that. That's I think it's the name of a stadium somewhere, but otherwise I'm good with that. If I'm not going to get flagged for trademark violation, this Google Gestapo coming after me. A new energy for sure. I think that there's one thing I've noticed about DeMeco is, and this is funny. Sometimes you'll have coaches that'll be like, "Come on, guys, more energy, more energy," and it's like yelling at a comedian to tell better jokes. It doesn't have the desired effect. It doesn't fill guys with juice and verve when you command them to have more energy. So the coach has to kind of have a personality that invites the energy and fuels the energy. And I think DeMeco is obviously that guy, but that's not a surprise to anybody. I think the fact that CJ and another couple guys have commented on DeMeco's sense of humor, that was a little bit of a surprise to me, because like DeMeco's it's not like he doesn't have a sense of humor, but I never thought of him as a crack and jokes type of guy. But I think he's loose with these guys. What's the difference in you going from year one to year two, just approaching the OTA, which by the way stands for organized team activity? It's a common question we get. Approaching the OTA with some experience.
I'm trying to be more vocal and just be that fun guy on the team, be a guy that you could look at for the energy. Like I'm just trying to be a guy that is, positive out there on the field.
Yeah, and I think that's what he is. He talks a little bit more in a minute, I believe, about some of the technical things he needs to improve on. As far as the deep dive into the Texans' D-line play, what they do well, when they can improve leverage, hand technique, that's a really good idea, Arthur. And I can maybe combine that with watching some of San Francisco. And, obviously not everybody's going to be Nick Bosa. If like 3 guys are, that'd be cool. But there's going to be some similarities this year with last year's defensive line and their MO, just with more of a focus on giving a damn about the run. I'd say one big difference between a DeMeco Ryans defense and a Lovie Smith defense is that a DeMeco Ryans defense genuinely gives a damn about stopping the run, where a Lovie Smith defense can tend to just play the run on the way to the quarterback, while not even actually getting to the quarterback, as it happened last year. So, Jalen Pitre, what are your interactions? What have your interactions been like with Jimmy Ward, the safety who the Texans signed in free agency, coming over from San Francisco?
Oh, great interactions. We already got a handshake. So that's lit. And, he a good guy. He's a leader. You can see why he's been in the league so long. And I'm excited to play with him. He plays with his hair on fire, and it's fun when you can play with a guy like that.
Hair on fire. Okay. That's the second hair on fire reference of the press conference. First from DeMeco Ryans and then Jalen Pitre. So either that's just because these guys both think that way about having their hair on fire, or or maybe Jalen was sitting waiting for DeMeco to come up. But regardless, more guys with their hair on fire. I would also encourage as many guys as possible to, especially Tua, to grow his hair out long. Because Tua, long history of defensive players, whether they be Samoan or not. Tua's dad is Samoan, his mom is Tongan, so Polynesian. So it's not just Palomalu. I mean, we're talking about Kevin Green, various linebackers, Clay Matthews III, anybody. The long hair will serve you well. I feel like Jalen Pitre has it in him too. If you play with reckless abandon, especially, grow your hair long, because you'll earn an extra 2 Pro Bowls because of it. That's a fact. You'll get an extra Pro Bowl out of it, probably like earlier than you would have otherwise, because people would pay attention and notice you because of your long hair. That's why Chase Winovich cutting his hair was stupid. I don't know why he did that. I haven't seen him yet out there. I don't know if he's growing it out. As far as what do you think about DeMeco and getting to know him and then seeing him as a head coach for the first time?
Yeah, he's a great head coach. A guy that's really intentional with what he's doing. You can see it in his meetings, and, you can really feel it at practice. He's making sure that, every rep that I'm doing, whether it's a walk.
Did I say Tua? Toa. Damn it. I'm going to get that at some point before I meet him in person.
Walk through a practice, even in the film room, that I'm seeing the things that I need to see and finishing the right way. He's always talking to me about my body position and, my leverage. And, I'm thankful to have a coach that, cares so much about the game and, really loves the game of football.
Okay, so when it comes to tackling, because we know that as many awesome things as Jalen Pitre did last year, Jalen would be the first to tell you that he needs to improve his tackling. The thing that some coaches screw up, and it's not their fault. Well, it's kind of their fault, but they've just never been taught. It's that you can very much work and improve tackling without pads on and without actually tackling, because 90% of the deal is being in the right position, both like where you relate to the person you're tackling, your pad level, your hips, all of that, to the point where the tackle is almost an afterthought if you're doing it right. And those are the things that you can concentrate in OTAs that a lot of teams don't. And you see it. You'll watch. You spot it like that. Teams get lazy and they just kind of run past the running back and tag off and everything. If you really want to work on tackling, it's all about using the same leverage, pad level, everything else that you would, getting the same pad level, and then you kind of wait a beat for the guy to get past you, and then you practice exploding up through him. And then there's other drills you can do on top of that. But it's just there's no excuse for not tackling well, because you'll still hear some coaches say that, well, we're not allowed to tackle in practice, or we're not allowed to wear pads in practice. Okay, but then why are some teams tackling well and you guys aren't? Like, there's no excuse. If other people are doing it better than you, you can't blame it on the CBA. So anyway, sorry, get off my soapbox. They get it. The DeMeco gets it. And Jalen Pitre, partly last year, he was learning to play from deep because he hadn't really played from deep at Baylor. And he was also flying up and a lot of times having to tackle in the open field without getting any actual support from anybody else on the front seven because the run defense was so bad. So I think he'll be better because hopefully better support from the guys around him. And then also just with emphasis from DeMeco, a better feel for how to play safety from deep instead of, he was like a linebacker who could play slot in college more so than a true deep safety. Now he'll be playing all over the field. This is Jalen. What are some of the qualities of Will Anderson Jr.?
It's a guy that's used to just making plays, and I love to be around that type of energy.
Okay, simple enough. Yeah, energy again. Next one. As you self-scout your rookie year, what are some things you like or some things you think you can do to be much better? Boy, whoever asked it said to be much better. Oh, geez, buddy.
Oh, yeah, the biggest thing I would say is my patience. I feel like I developed good patience throughout the year, but it's also one of those things that you could, never perfect. So I'm, trying to build on that and try to just slow my eyes down, and that'll allow me to play faster and make those plays that need to be made.
Oh, that's interesting. Slow my eyes down, patience, not jumping routes, kind of diagnosing things and letting it come to you as a safety. And it's funny when you I love to listen to the defensive backs talk about just even transitioning from zone to man. It's all about the eyes. You got zone eyes and man eyes. What you're doing and what you're keying on in the backfield, what you're looking at with formations. And it really is, for safeties, it's almost like a video game where you're just like, you start to feel the rhythm and the flow of how the offense comes at you. And he's a really bright kid and he gives a damn. So it's going to come to him. I'm excited about what he could do in this defense. They had Tufanga. This is going to be the night of me butchering Polynesian names. Was it Tufanga from San Francisco, who's done really well in the last couple years and given that defense a lot of versatility. So hopefully he can be like the fella in San Francisco who I'm not going to insult by butchering his name again. What's it like working with Corey Undelin? He's the defensive. They call him a defensive passing coordinator, which sounds weird, but that's a thing these days. What's it like working with Corey Undelin? What are the differences you see and how they're going to work with you?
Oh, I love Corey. He's in the meetings. He's very interactive, and he knows a lot about the game of football as a whole, but especially about the secondary. He's a guy that in the meeting room, he's not going to let anything slide, and he's going to make sure that every detail is, said in the meeting room, making sure that we get everything, squared away.
Yeah, and I do not that I'm opposed to a passing coordinator. I like the idea of just, you see it with CJ. They've got a lot of eyeballs on CJ right now, which is a good thing. That's what they've done with Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence over there between Doug Peterson and their offensive staff, they've got a lot of guys with NFL experience, with a lot of NFL experience working with Trevor Lawrence, and you don't want to get into a situation where you got too many Chiefs and not enough Indians, but they very much can attack problems and help him along that way. And I think that's what they're trying to do with CJ Stroud. Bill Lazor is out there. They've got Gerard Johnson, obviously, and Bobby Slowik himself, plus a passing coordinator. They got a lot of dudes out there to be a resource for CJ Stroud. That is it for Jalen Pitre. Let me grab a couple questions and then we'll hit. I think Davis Mills is up next. Let's see. A swarm defense similar to the Philly. It's a rotation of people coming in all game. Yeah. Ideally, that's one thing. Wild thing. I'm glad you brought this up because I think when it comes to team building, people have said, and understandably so, I've said this myself, actually. So I've said, look, you drafting a Nick Bosa would be awesome, and he's great for your defense, but a defensive end does not provide the same number of wins as a franchise quarterback. I think the difference, though, is you have to think about it in some ways as it's not just drafting Nick Bosa. It's or Will Anderson. It's multiple high picks and or free agents or whomever at times that you use to get an awesome defensive line and have that ability to rotate. No, some of them are going to come in the form of like a Charles Omenihu. I can't remember what they traded to get Charles Omenihu, a 5th round pick or whatever it was. It was a 6th round pick, I think, wasn't it? So Charles Omenihu, they got a lot out of him. They're continuing to build that defensive line, just like in Philly, where you got so many guys that can rush the passer that these poor offensive linemen, loathsome creatures, they're getting exhausted while like a fresh wave of defensive linemen comes in with fresh feet. Let's see. It's about H-Town has some positive vibes. Can't wait to see what Davis is thinking. Gonna have a stampede defense, top 5D. Let's see. Tell me why Jalen Pitre has that coaching vibe to him. He does have a bit of a coaching vibe, huh? Sean Pendergast this morning was saying that he thought he was kind of nerdy because we were trying to figure out whether, because he said, because Jalen Pitre said something was lit. I was like, oh, okay. So I can continue to try to relate to kids by awkwardly shoehorning the word lit into things. And which obviously, no, I should never, I'll never, I'm too old. I'm not going to be using the word lit. But I thought it had kind of gone out of, I figured like once Johnny Manziel started using it, that was the beginning of the end. But things can still be lit, at least according to Jalen Pitre. But yeah, Sean's evidence for Jalen Pitre being kind of nerdy was him using the word lit. I was like, no, even if it's nerdy to say lit, then Jalen Pitre was using it ironically. I'm not going to accuse Jalen Pitre of nerdiness. Let's see Davis Mills. Is it Davis?
I definitely
Oh, it's still Jalen.
can. I feel it. I feel like it's, fresh air. Just a great time to, be in Houston. We're trying to bring that feeling back, and we're trying to just, continue to stack days and get better. We're not really trying to look forward to anything, but we're just trying to take one day at a time and continue to, improve on a day-to-day basis.
He's trying to improve. Yeah, there's Davis Mills. Let me zoom up to these questions so I can read the questions for you instead of like listening for the questions, kind of hearing the questions, misphrasing the question, and then going to the transcript. I'm just going to the transcript right now. Davis Mills was asked, they bring in Stroud as the 2nd overall pick. What do you see as your role? How will you help him make the transition?
Still, I'm competing for that starting job. I mean, since I've been drafted in the NFL, I've been in a competition. I don't think anything's going to change, but I mean, it's been great getting to know CJ so far. He's an extremely hard worker, and it'll be good to see how we go out there and compete every day and make each other better.
Yeah, so that was the one that got a lot of attention because, and I think maybe it was just the way that it hits the headline or it hits the tweet or wherever you consume it. I think it came off to a lot of people like like Davis was consciously distancing himself from being a mentor, or like he had said, hey, I'm not here to be a mentor. I'll be honest with you, even if he had said, I'm not here to be a mentor, I think, number one, I think very few people want him to be a mentor, so I wouldn't waste any energy getting upset about it. Two, it's that I think it's been presented to him as compete for this job. And, push CJ. If you, I don't know if he's been told explicitly, if you earn the job, you'll get it. But I do think that there is something about Bobby Slowik and DeMeco Ryan's experience in San Francisco where they've seen multiple guys come in and learn the system and do a good job. Bobby Slowik was in Washington with Kirk Cousins and RG3, saw the way that played out, that I don't think that they're just blanket writing off Davis Mills. I think they're going to try to allow it to be a competition. I think Davis is just more CJ's just more talented in a lot of ways, and that will be impossible to ignore. And I expect him to win this, and it'll be a tilted competition, obviously. But I think that Davis is, for some reason, Davis and CJ are too similar to me in my weird brain. I think like Davis has potential above and beyond what we saw last year. Like last year was a mess. And between that offensive talent and personnel and Pep Hamilton, Davis was going to look as bad as he did. I think CJ Stroud has a much brighter future. I think Davis, I will be surprised if he ever becomes a full-time starter in the NFL, but I'm A-okay with him wanting to compete for a starting job right now. And actually, I'll tell you a personal story after we're done with Davis about kind of me having the same attitude as Davis when a guy got drafted. So then he was asked, what's it like working with Case?
Different things that I've pointed out. I wouldn't say anything in particular. I don't want to clue any defenses across the league, but just different things that I know I can work on to make myself a better player.
That was a question. What's the biggest thing you focused on, actually? So
I mean, a lot.
All right, I'm trying to be polite here, but all right, Davis, like don't be too paranoid about what other defenses are trying to figure out what you're working on during May or so. There's not a team of researchers in Baltimore trying to figure out exactly what Davis Mills is working on this time of year. But I do appreciate his commitment to not allowing any leaks or having loose lips that would sink the ship. If the next question is an answer is, let's see if this is the next question. What specifically are you working on? And then on the difficulty of going into your third offensive system.
A lot of different offenses across the league run similar concepts. They're just calling them different things. So,
okay, so yeah, he was asked about the difficulty of adapting to this system.
Some of it is just kind of getting rid of all the old verbiage and figuring out the new terminology. And then a lot of the other stuff, too, is just learning from the new coaches, the new guys we have in the room, and finding ways to get better.
I went to Stanford, dude. That's what he's saying.
He knows.
Do you think, hey, I went to Stanford and graduated with a degree in some kind of business or economics or something. Do you think this is hard? I got to learn how to what we number the holes in this system versus other systems. They're all holes.
Knows what I like.
We had a coach once that came in. I don't know, every system I've ever been in, like the holes are like 2, 4, 6, 8, 1, 3, 5, 7 on offense. And this guy came in and he numbered them. You know what? Okay, so there's some carryover to Davis Mills learning the new vernacular. He numbered them like from right to left, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, which is like a total brain screw, right? So like when something was called like 32, it was to way out there. But like 38 would be way to your left. It was weird, man. I know a certain percentage of you listening right now know what I'm talking about. I apologize to everybody else who didn't have to live through that. I made a lot of mental errors. I wasn't like Davis Mills. Your third coach in 3 years. What's your account of DeMeco Ryans so far?
What it's like to go through a training camp practice in this heat. He knows how to take care of his guys, but then he also knows what it needs to be done to put in the work and come out there and win games. And that's kind of spread around the locker room, and we feel the fire that comes from him. And, I mean, it's been good. The guys have a lot of respect, and we're excited to play for him.
Fire, energy, hair on fire. I like the buzzwords this year more so than I feel like DeMeco's using these words a lot, and it's filtering into what the guys are saying. And hopefully DeMeco has some good PowerPoint presentations, because there's nothing better as an NFL player than having a coach who does a bunch of the same PowerPoints all the time. Because then whenever you go to speak in public, they're like imprinted in your brain. For a long time, I had like 5 different Dom Capers speeches just planted in my brain through seeing them on PowerPoint multiple times. And I would give them up and deliver them pretty much exactly like Dom Capers would. I wasn't invited back a lot. Let's see. How would you describe Bobby Slowik's offense? Oh, no. This is a good one. How would you describe what last year was like for you?
Gerard, I actually went to a quarterback camp with him when he was working the Elite 11 circuit back when I was in high school.
So he's talking about Gerard Johnson.
So I've known him for years now, and then Bobby's been great.
Jesus, I got these all mixed up. Excuse my language. Sorry. How is his relationship with Gerard Johnson in the locker room so far?
Getting to know. He's another guy you can tell who's put in hours and hours studying defenses. I know he's worked on the defensive side of the ball, so he even has more insight than what a strictly offensive coach would have. So,
that's interesting. That is a good point about Bobby Slowik, because he's done different things. I mean, he worked at Pro Football Focus, which I whatever your feelings are about Pro Football Focus, the grades are usually the big issue because there's some idiosyncrasies there. But as far as the research they do kind of go deep dive into stuff in a way that not necessarily a lot of coaches ever do. So I think that he can look at the game from having been on the defensive side of the ball, having been the son of a coach, having worked outside of football, kind of like James Click started off at Baseball Prospectus, and I think it gave him a different view of things. Then like that part of it, and I think that's something that appeals to DeMeco. Those two kind of came up together as coaches. They were both at the bottom of the totem pole at the beginning. I think that's something DeMeco appreciates and feels like, okay, you can bring something different to the table. You can give these guys a different tool set, a different toolbox because you've just seen things differently. But the defensive understanding what stresses a defense is a seemingly simple thing that actually some offensive coaches don't get. They don't realize some of the simple things that stress a defense. Let's see. This might be the description of Bobby Slowik's offense.
Big learning experience. Obviously, the record was what it was.
Now, this is how would you describe what last year was like for you? He says a big learning experience. Obviously, the record was what it was.
We wanted to win more games. And I think it led to some of the decisions that we ended up having to make as an organization this offseason. But
okay, yeah, I don't know if that's distancing. Is he distancing himself there from responsibility or culpability for the way the season went? I don't know. I'm trying not to overthink it. He's trying to maintain his dignity. Well, kind of. It's embarrassing to get replaced like that. I'll tell you my quick story. I was going into my 5th year in the NFL. I'd been an okay starter on a really good team, but just kind of okay. And the Texans drafted a defensive tackle, Marcus Stroud, who's just a gigantic human being out of Georgia. Awesome guy, extremely good athlete. And I feel like obviously they drafted him to replace me. So I kind of like the writing was on the wall in everybody else's mind. Marcus was going to start in everybody else's mind. And I just didn't accept it. And I just made it my goal that I was going to start that year and start the entire season. And I ended up starting the entire season. And now Marcus wasn't a number 3 overall pick. He broke his hand early, so I got off to a slow start. I had a little bit of fate intervened. The football gods were on my side. But I ended up starting the whole season, and I ended up having a really good year. Was like I had a dummy year on the end of my contract that like I never expected to make. But the Texans wanted me, and basically we're like, yeah, we'll pay that money. So because basically I responded to the challenge. I think Davis Mills, I don't think that's going to happen for Davis Mills. It's different with a quarterback who's drafted number 2 overall, but I think it could spur him to perhaps be the best he's ever been in the NFL. What does that look like? I don't know. But I think that's the challenge he's got right now. And just like, look, I had a chip on my shoulder about wanting to beat out Marcus Stroud. But it's not like I hated Marcus Stroud or I was a bad teammate over it or anything. I thought he was an awesome guy. It was just that was my goal. And I think that's where Davis Mills is right now.
Yeah, a ton of stuff we talk about in that offense is finding ways to create yards after catch for the receivers.
So he's talking about, he was asked, what is the Bobby Slowik offense like?
Fire off the ball on our inside and outside zone run scheme, using our big athletic linemen, getting out on the edge and getting our playmakers out on the edge, and then also setting up play action or just ways in the drop back game to get our guys out there in space with the ability to run after catch. And I mean, it's been exciting so far. We've been pushing the tempo a lot, being aggressive with timing and anticipation and on our side as a quarterbacks, and really trying to emphasize to those guys on the edge that we're playing fast and we're going to run by people this year.
We're going to run by people this year. There you go, Davis. That's an old team spirit. I think that if there's one word I would use to describe Kyle Shanahan offense or Gary Kubiak in its prime or Mike Shanahan, it's greedy. And remember Alex Gibbs, the offensive line coach, he used to talk about wanting to lead the league in big runs every year, runs 20 yards and greater. They wanted to lead the league in the number of those runs. They're very, very greedy. It's not enough to just run for 5 yards, not enough to run, certainly not enough to run for 3 yards in a cloud of dust. When things are operating properly, they want huge, huge runs. That's why it's such a big deal that receivers be willing to block downfield. That's how you break those big runs. That's how you get the run after catch. The shot plays and the ability to do those are the reason you're able to get the run after the catch on throws over the middle to Tank Dell. So it's greedy and it's more and it's more and it's more all the time. So like the old Michael Douglas greed is good. That's what these guys are. They're greedy. And when it's done right, it's really, really cool because they're greedy as hell. Like a bunch of 1880s capitalists up in there. Okay, so next question. Davis, you've discussed your approach. What do you feel like you've improved? Do you feel like you're a better quarterback now than you were a year ago?
Always been a very self-motivated person. I want to be the best player I can be. Obviously, he's kind of another stress factor, kind of pushing me to be my best.
He's another stress factor pushing me to be my best. We got the got off a sequence somewhere here. Oh well, whatever. CJ the stress fracture. CJ the stress factor. That's a pretty good. Hold on, I'm gonna write that down. The stress factor. Got an old implement here.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot. I don't think I've seen anybody get in and out of cuts like Tank before.
Oh, okay. As asked about Tank Dell and what he's seen from him. Oh, and it was just simply that. He's like, I've never seen. I want to talk about this for a minute.
Always been a very self-motivated person. I want to be the best player I can be. Obviously, he's kind of another stress factor, kind of pushing me to be my best. Yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot. I don't think I've seen anybody get in and out of cuts like Tank before.
Yeah, so that part of it, that's actually pretty cool to hear. I mean, Davis Mills has seen a lot of NFL film. One thing when you're watching other teams, you tend to notice the guys on your side of the ball. When you're scouting, when you're scouting, like if I'm a defensive lineman and I'm getting ready to play Tennessee, I'm watching Tennessee's offense play versus 4, 5, 6 other defenses, and you start to notice defensive linemen. Likewise, when these guys are preparing for a Tennessee defense, they're watching all the offense that have played against them. So you start to pick up on, who's flashing offensively, defensively, all of that. That's why it's always it's interesting that the defense votes for the offensive Pro Bowl players and vice versa. I always felt like if you could trust guys to actually be honest and not just try to sabotage other guys for their own benefit, you actually get a better feel for the guys on your side of the ball than you do the guys on your your opponents. Because your opponents, you're seeing all those divisional opponents a couple times. You're seeing 4 NFC opponents, and you're not necessarily getting a really broad view of the rest of the other offenses in the league or in the conference, where you see a whole lot of the guys on your side of the ball and try to emulate. Let's see. What did I do? I crisscrossed teams. Which one did I do? Which one? Let's see. Seth also on the Jags. Yeah, what did I Marcus Stroud was drafted by the Jags. Yeah. I was talking about my going into my 4th year in the NFL. I played for the Jaguars. So, and then that's what I was talking about when the Texans, geez, man, Texans fan in rehab, you got me questioning my own CTE by incorrectly correcting me. And now I've gummed everything all up. Yeah, I was playing with the Jaguars. I was in my 4th year. And maybe I said Texans, I guess. I was in my 4th year with the Jaguars. Marcus Stroud got drafted. I played really well that year, started the 5th year, and then went in the expansion draft to the Texans. So it's always cool to have a CTE joke, though. Keep those coming. They never stop being funny and original whenever I get a CTE joke. Robert Woods. I mixed these up a little bit, too. So, again, with the CTE.
Yeah, I would say a good leader already coming in, vocal, speaking up in meetings, being able to sit with him at times in the quarterback meetings, hearing him ask some great questions, trying to pick apart the offense and grasp it pretty early. Out on the field, making some strong throws, good reads, good decisions, and that's really a good thing to start with a rookie quarterback coming in, being able to make the right decisions, know when to throw it, know when to pull it down, and good decision timing accuracy with the football.
Okay, the no one wanted to throw it, no one wanted to pull it down. I think that's the big thing. I actually looked up like the 5 things, an article written like about a decade ago about the 5 things that rookie quarterbacks don't do well. And these are the 5 things: poor footwork, overconfidence, decision making. They don't all do these things poorly, except these tend to be the 5 most common things. So poor footwork, overconfidence, decision making, going too fast through progressions, holding the ball too long. Of those things, I don't think poor footwork is going to be an issue. I think that CJ's got a really good base with that. He's going to continue to refine it. He gives a damn about it, which is important. Overconfidence, I don't think that's going to be an issue. I don't wonder. I wonder if confidence in general, either over or not being certain of oneself, it tends to be an issue. That's a lot of that is sometimes just, are you willing to make mistakes? Is CJ Stroud going to be willing to like learn what the envelope is? Remember when Marcus Mariota, his rookie year, didn't throw any interceptions during training camp? And I remember, I want to say it was Dan Orlovsky saying that's not actually a good thing. Like, you got to learn what you can and can't do in the NFL. I don't think that's going to be an issue. Decision making, that's another one where you got to A, know the system, B, know what you can and can't get away with. And I think that that's slow for anybody, whether you're Peyton Manning or anybody else. That just comes along with time and experience. And you got to get, that's one of the reasons to start guys week 1. They got to start getting that decision making going at that amped up speed. And it's hard to do that in practice. It's just not the same. Going too fast through the progressions or holding the ball too long. There were times when CJ would hold the ball, you could argue, too long in college, but it's difficult because, Ohio State does some things where you're waiting for the route to clear and the guy that you're waiting for is awesome. So it makes sense that you have a little extra time to hold on to the ball with the slew of awesome wide receivers that they've had there. So I'm not sure. I don't see any glaring red flags with that. Going through the progressions, processing all that stuff, that's going to be tough for any rookie quarterback.
Yeah, just pick their brain. I'm trying to be in there and know what they expect from the.
That's the one we just played. He's got shuffled up a little bit because of that first segment we did. Basically, he's asked, how did you pick Houston? How did you know you wanted to be here?
I would say Coach Slow, knowing the offense that he's coming from, me having familiarity with it, and then trying to just, like I said, pick back up off in a good offense, efficient offense, having a young quarterback, being able to pick it up and kind of just knowing what to expect, me and the coach having the same expectations with the offense, and me understanding, just trying to get in that same rhythm and knowing how it works, knowing what plays could be made.
Yeah, and again, I think Robert Woods was in LA. His first year in LA was Jared Goff's second year as a quarterback, but Jared Goff's first year was Sean McVay. So as Jared Goff was learning this offense as a young quarterback, Robert Woods was there, ended up having 800 yards in 12 games his first year there, and then took off. In his second year, he had 1,200. Second year in LA, Robert Woods had 1,200 yards. The year after that, he had over 1,100 yards, and all of that with a young Jared Goff, who we know, ultimately wouldn't be the guy that Sean McVay wanted to win a Super Bowl, but they did some pretty damn good things there. So I like that Robert Woods has been through this with another young quarterback already. Not that it's going to be the exact same situation, but I think he, kind of like Bobby Slowik was talking about earlier, there's a process. They've got it all set up as far as what you learn on this day, what you learn the next day, what progression you want to be seeing. Robert Woods has been with and worked through all of that before. I think that can help a lot. I think understanding the timeline, understanding exactly what the sequence of events is, that can go a long way. Where with, whether it's a Pep Hamilton offense, a Bill O'Brien offense, a David Culley offense, I don't think that those guys necessarily had as systematic approach as Bobby Slowik has talked about in his interviews in San Francisco. Okay, this is I believe he's asked a question about Tank Dell, your early impressions of him, and how will you work with someone like him to get him up to speed?
I would say from a receiver standpoint, I would say a good technician, good feet, good hands. You see him run his routes really crisp with his feet. For me, just give Tank just confidence, knowing he could do it at this level, believe in himself. Obviously, he has all the physical abilities to be able to play in this league fast, quick. Really just want him to be able to have an impact right away.
Yeah, that's having like telling him or giving him the confidence to do it. It's not like Tank Dell strikes you as a guy that needs a big infusion of confidence. And yet, I think when you're a smaller guy or just when you're a rookie in general, sometimes it is it's really important. It's really good to hear from vets about just like, hey, listen, man, you belong here. Don't act like you don't, and don't ever let yourself think that you don't. I can remember really clearly my rookie year, Joel Smingy, a veteran, basically telling me like, hey, listen, you can do this. Don't let anybody tell you you're just a lunch pail guy or you're just here to be a backup because you weren't a high draft pick or anything like that. Like, he was very emphatic about it. Like, no, listen, you can do this. And that was really cool. Like, I still remember it to this day. It was a very nice vote of confidence, especially when you have a rough couple days of camp as a rookie. You're getting your ass beat a little bit. So that stuff matters. That stuff matters. Oh, and this is John McClain asking, how can his be? John has a little bit of a leading question which is smart. Instead of saying, can his size be an advantage? He says, how can his size be an advantage? If you just ask, can it be an advantage? It's too easy for somebody to say, sure. But I want you to watch Robert Woods. Robert Woods has to think about this. I don't think he was expecting this question.
Advantage? Your size. How can it be an advantage?
Tank size?
That's what I got.
I mean, he's very agile. Being a smaller guy, being able to put his foot in the ground and change direction, accelerate right away. Mismatch against linebackers, of course, bigger corners, and he's shifty enough to mix up well with the smaller DBs.
Yeah, I mean, it's like his size. His size allows him to be that athletic. It's you're not going to find somebody 20 pounds heavier than Tank Dell that can move the way Tank Dell moves. So it's still going to be an issue. I mean, they're going to. I say an issue. Certainly many people can have worked around it being smaller wide receivers these days, especially. And I think they're going to find a lot of opportunities and ways to use him in the slot, in motion, and all of that. If you look at San Francisco last year, they were amongst the leaders in pre-snap motion, whereas the Texans were second to last in pre-snap motion. So when this offense is humming the way it should, they figure out ways to get guys matched up appropriately, get them away from press coverage, all that stuff. And special teams, it just doesn't matter. It'll be he's just fast as hell.
Just coming.
Let's see. The last time you were here, you had a lot of complimentary things to say about this franchise as far as them rebuilding. Did you ever imagine yourself being here? What have your interactions with Coach Ryan's been like? So I'm guessing he said some nice things in the Titans press conference when he was with the Titans.
Here and hearing DeMeco talk for years, I guess, being in the Rams and seeing him kind of develop with the 49ers and take over that defense and give energy to that linebacker group, that whole team, and be able to see him come here and kind of feed that same energy to our team. I see from our defensive side a lot of energy, a lot of juice spreading over to the offense. I think a lot of hungry players, hungry coaches. I feel like this is a similar situation. I feel like when I came to LA with a young McVay, some people say it was a rebuild, but I feel like it was just a team buying into the culture, believing in your coach, believing in the system. And I think Coach Ryan has that here. We got a lot of young players buy into this offense and to this defense, to this culture, and we can change this environment.
Yeah, the thing about a lot of those guys is it's funny. They are we reached the end of the video, so I'll take some questions. I think a lot of those guys in that really in the McVay tree are, and I guess in the Shanahan tree too, they don't look like NFL coaches. They're a little too healthy. They're a little too vibrant. They're a little too still full of life and energy. So it's nice. Like Robert Saleh, Matt LaFleur. Matt LaFleur's got a nervous energy to him, but they're all very young and fit and healthy, and I think kind of have a different approach to life that I don't want to. I hate splitting it into Gen Z type things, but I do think that maybe younger guys respond to that more, and they might chafe against the older school mentality more. I don't know. Every generation has said that about the next generation forever, so I don't like to buy into that too much. Although I would say Andy Reid is probably, I could see Andy Reid, despite his age, has a personality and a persona that probably Gen Z doesn't mind all that much. It's not like Belichick at his peak. You look at all these other guys, like Saban has softened considerably because he's had to. I don't think he's softened at his core. I think at his core, he's still Nick Saban, but Belichick's had to soften a little bit. So like DeMeco made that comment the other day about how you can't hit in practice anymore. And it's weird because he's still a relatively young guy. And he came into the league when you couldn't hit like you could 10 years before that. DeMeco would have fit in just fine in any era of football. Don't get me wrong, but it's just that DeMeco's also got that ability to relate to younger guys, and he's also learned things. So let's see. People forget what Davis Mills did the last game he played. I know I wonder if Davis went up to CJ and was like, I'm the reason you're here. Could have thrown an interception, but I didn't. I forced that thing through that defensive back's fingers into the waiting arms of a number 2 overall draft pick. You can see over the O-line pretty easy. I'm guessing that's a conversation about Bryce Young or something. The Davis Mills in his neck. It's not long. It's just big. It's like he's the quarterback equivalent of Takeo Spikes. Remember Takeo Spikes and his ridiculously large neck? Like that was for a linebacker, but for quarterbacks, I would say Davis Mills' neck is like that. I wanted to cut him after his last game, especially because they were down by 3 touchdowns or 3 scores. Let's see. It's a good thing having Mills. Never know when injuries will happen. Yeah, and I think that's like if I were DeMeco and I'm coming out of San Francisco and I just saw my chance at winning the Super Bowl go down the drains because my 4th string quarterback wasn't good enough, because my 3rd string quarterback was trying to play with a numb throwing hand. It was it's probably at the very least tempting to keep 3 quarterbacks. I don't know how Caserio feels about it, but I could see that happening. Tattoo of Nick Hanna, kitchen staff. Yes, I agree, Abigail. I think he'll have the chance to, if Davis can look good in the preseason, if he can get good reports, it's not even like how he looks in games necessarily. If Davis learns this offense, and because so many teams run the Kubiak-Shanahan system now, and because there's a network of coaches out there who are familiar with it, when Bobby Slowik gets on the phone and talks to one of his buddies up in Seattle or somewhere, God, I don't know, and answer some questions about Davis Mills, if he can honestly say, yeah, like he looks like a different guy. He's figured out this system. We'll be good. Then we're cruising right on into 3rd round pick or so. Let's see. He might not be that talented, but Davis Mills never been really given a chance with all the craziness. Yeah, it's I mean, that's always the question, right? What is his ceiling? Let's see. People still debating my CTE. Didn't have to win. Never stops being funny because you can't remember them. Wild thing, you're on crack. You guys are having too many fun conversations while I'm trying to talk during all this stuff. So I'm going to chop this up. If you guys missed the first part, I think that I will put the CJ Stroud part and him crisscrossing with Bobby Slowik in his interviews from last year. I'll just put that up as a separate video, and probably DeMeco Ryans is a separate video, and Davis Mills is a separate video. So go ahead and If you missed any of those, like, click, subscribe, all of that, share with a friend. I'm going to be doing a lot of Texans content this year. I'm going to start doing probably at least one general NFL news per day too. So little bit of NFL in general, just the biggest story of the day, and then a heaping load of Texans content, especially as the season comes along. I'd like to be doing like 2 or 3 Texans topics a day. So please like, subscribe, all that stuff right now. And thank you. And also for who I got testy with early on, if you're still here, sometimes I get like sarcastically testy. Twin 98. I apologize if I was too rough with you, Twin 98. Sometimes I'll blame it on the CTE. That's what we'll do. I'm not going to do that.